John Mathers, part of the Healthier Working Lives team, and I'm delighted today to be interviewing Sarah Kettley and Luis Soares. Sarah is a Professor of Material and Design Innovation at Edinburgh College of Art, part of Edinburgh University, and she's also leader of the co-design team at the Healthier Working Lives programme. Luis is a science and technology scholar, part of the design informatics team at Edinburgh University, and also part of the co-design team. So it's a hugely exciting program that we're working on at Healthier Working Lives, and it's a real moment of change. We've done a lot of work in the last 18 months, and it's getting to a very exciting stage. So, Sarah, can you tell me a little bit about why you chose to use co-design in this program and why you think it's a powerful way of making change happen?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I came into the program after it started, and I found it really, really interesting that all 7 research projects in the wider community of practice had co-design written into them. So I was very pleased to be invited to take part. But personally, I find co-design really, really powerful in that it allows individuals to really sort of find their voice. It gives kind of approval, if you like, of that voice and their agency. And it starts to build up creativity where people thought they might not be creative for various reasons. But it also allows space for reflection and personal growth, which is really important for organizations as well as the individual, so that they can become part of this kind of larger community of practice in a really positive way.
And presumably bringing all those elements together can actually affect real change in a really meaningful way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that we're going to talk about impact, and we are looking at impact at different levels for that reason as well. But I mean, I think in terms of our approach, we wanted to be quite practical, very pragmatic about this, because we knew we were dealing with care homes who were under a great deal of pressure. When we started working, obviously, the COVID was creating a lot of pressures on time, on availability, on safety measures, on whether we should be there in person or online. But we also wanted to be quite principled. There's a principle behind the way that we're working as well. So our flexible approach is a way of meeting those care home staff, the workforce, halfway. So we're using the language of co-production and care pathways as well, which we've taken from the health sector as a way of kind of joining co-design and co-production. So hopefully that's helping. But the flexible approach is principled as well. It allows us to design bespoke pathways so that care homes can engage in their own way as much as possible with what we're trying to do. So we're really trying to listen to the cultures and the situations of each care home as a community in its own right as we go along. And through the activities that I know Luis is going to describe to you, that we put together for the Ripple framework, we've been able to spend time with each of those groups of people, with each organisation, to help them build up familiarity and confidence in this way of working.
Right. And quite rightly, you're talking about bringing different groups of people together as part of the co-design process, because do you want to mention something about bringing together the care workers with the Trailblazer programs or enterprises that we've been talking to?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that I've spoken so far really describes the first stage of co-design as we see it, that kind of building up of capacity and of defining the issues that each care home would like to tackle. They've prioritised those. And what we're doing now is pivoting into real action. So hopefully our care home staff are now prepared to take part as entrepreneurs in a team with established entrepreneurs who really need access to these cohorts and these situations to make sure that their solutions and their product offerings are the best fit that they can be for the situations. And we know it's hard for them to get access to these situations and these staff. So we're trying to facilitate that. So we're about to go into a 6-month phase of co-design with entrepreneurs, putting teams together with care home staff. And we're doing a little matchmaking process at the moment to try and ensure that they can work together really effectively, and we'll support them through the next 6 months to do that.
Great. Sarah, you mentioned earlier on about the importance of measuring the impact of co-design on the Healthier Working Lives programme. Could you just talk a little bit about that? Because obviously that's going to be such an important part of it.
Well, having spent all that time with the 6 care homes, we've realised, while also working with Scottish Care as a partner on the project is really, really important, because we understand every other day there are reports, reviews coming out that we see the impact of policy on the lived experience and the quality of care that can be delivered, and also importantly for our project, on the levels of recruitment and retention of staff in this sector. Now, our care homes, we ourselves may or may not have the power to change policy individually, but we can add our voice to the calls for improvements in policy. So we're seeing calls for increases in pay, in recognition of the profession, of professional progression and self-care at all levels. These are all critical issues. So we think that measuring that is obviously very long term. It's quite diffuse as well, as a form of impact. But we'll be looking to really bring the voices of our staff that we've been working with into that arena, if you like, and develop creative ways of adding those voices, but because we're working with Scottish Care as well, we'll be looking for our outcomes and insights to be included in reports and in lobbying to the Scottish Government for change.
I know you were looking at some solutions which are shorter term, some which are long term. So
that's right.
There are ways that we can measure those in slightly different.
Yeah, so that was the much longer term, if you like, sort of the top level tier of impact that we're thinking of. But we're looking at 2 other levels as well of change. And one is at the other extreme of the level of the individual, and of the kind of the individuals that form the workforce in the teams in the homes themselves. So we're really having a look at local change as well, and almost giving permission where it's not really needed, but giving permission and sort of the confidence to individuals to take control over what they're able to take control of, and to enact change where they can, to recognize that they can bring that creativity and that power to play in their workplace. So we'll be looking at very local levels of change within the individual care homes as well. And then we're also looking at a more solution-focused level. And this is where our entrepreneurs are most likely to come into play, not exclusively, but most likely. So in the 6 months coming up, we'll be looking at how the prioritized concerns that have come out of our recent work are transformed into problem statements, design briefs. We're looking at possibly service design solutions or product design solutions. And by matching the entrepreneurs with our existing workforce teams, we'll be giving them the power to actually take those things forward through a proper design process, a development process. So it might be that a product already exists in some form but doesn't fit quite right, so we'll be looking at improvements. Or it might be that a totally new product is required, in which case we'll be looking at specifications. So we could be looking at things like, in the case of service design, specifications of stakeholders, mapping stakeholders, or experience journeys, that kind of thing. They're really kind of graphic materials that lay out what a service could be. In the case of more products, apps, for example, technologies, that kind of thing, we'll be looking at technology readiness levels. And again, this is a slightly longer term impact approach, in that we expect specifications by the end of our project, Healthier Working Lives, but not necessarily fully fledged products. So we'll be looking at how can those teams survive, how sustainable are the teams themselves to take those things forward, and where can they find the funding to take those things forward.
Fascinating. Thank you, Sarah. I'll come back to you in a minute about the early insights that you've had from the work so far. But I'd like to turn to Luis now, because part of the co-design work that has been developed to date has been using a fabulously interesting tool called the Ripple framework. And Luis, could I ask you to tell us a little bit about why you developed the co-design Ripple framework for healthier working lives, and a bit about what it is and what it does?
The Ripple framework is a collection of 30 design and management tools, which came all together. Some of these methods has been extended in activities, adapted and extended to activities. And the reason for these 30 methods, it is to create as a kind of an holistic vision of the co-design process where we will never get stuck. Because one of the first issues we faced and discussed, it was COVID-related issues that at a given point, for instance, we might not be able to get inside the care homes and to deliver the work, which fortunately didn't happen because we managed to cross the winter, which is almost gone. And we did most of our work during December. Mainly, it was really intense. But we were afraid that we would get stuck and not being able. So we needed to have a tool that could give us flexibility enough to never get stuck. And this is what the Ripple framework does. It has a lot of what Sarah and I like to call trapdoors. So if you get stuck, you can just disappear and appear in the other side with a way to push the things forward with a tool, an activity that makes sense for the care workers, and they can work with it and play with it and slowly become what, again, we like to call change makers.
Luis, what's been the reaction to the Ripple framework with the care worker community that you've been working with?
All right. The Ripple framework was not presented. Our intention, Sarah and I always intended at the beginning when I present the idea of the Ripple framework to give these to the care workers, to the teams, and they would be the ones design their own co-design path, right? They would select this mat, this mat, this mat, because this is what we can play with, we feel comfortable and can answer our questions. But then, because the nature of the co-design is not easy to explain, even amongst our community, is not easy, we decided not to introduce the Ripple framework fully to the community. So instead of that, we say, all right, let's go. We can give them opportunity to engage with us through activities by doing things. And then after that, we could start to explain what is this activity in particular, what is this method, and explain that it comes from this big thing where they can pick and select and do. But this is something that will come in the future when they are more comfortable.
Okay, so it sounds amazing, Luis. How do you think the Ripple framework can be adopted and used more widely in the future, both maybe within the care sector, but also beyond the care sector?
Yeah, as I said to you, the method that has been selected and curated as part of the Ripple framework all of them are tools for intervention. And the Ripple framework is made of 5 segments. All of them give you opportunity from the early stage of a given research to get immersed in a context, to learn from the context through observation, talking, building stories, storytelling, and from there start to design and the intervention until, for instance, assessment, strategy, and keep moving. And all of them has been done not purely from the academic point of view, but a lot from the business and industry point of view, which means that this toolbox can also be used out of the academia, in the industry, in any other sector that people can grab the tool.
Okay, thank you very much. So just to finish, Sarah and Luis, can you maybe give us some early insights that you've seen emerging from the process so far? Things that you found interesting or revelationary.
I wonder if Luis would like to go first with some specifics, and then I can do the kind of higher level stuff.
Yeah, I think that one of them I already mentioned, and that for me was a massive surprise. People finishing the session telling, now I am a co-designer. And that is really important. And I think that is a kind of very transformative, because people now are aware that they can, in a daily basis, change the things that they do. Actually, they have been doing it. The question is that they've never realized that they have done this for a reason, and that this could be bring in a more structured way and push forward and change the dynamics.
Thank you, Luis. Sarah?
I'll give some more sort of local, the things that have been defined by the care homes include things like teamwork, decision-making, verbal communication. So really supporting how teams work, which obviously is then transferable to other sectors as well. They've pinpointed specific issues with data about patients, the communication of a patient, not a patient, but a resident situation, for example, between night shift and day shift, for example. So there are little moments of communication that could be improved for the whole team to feel better about working together and to know that they're doing the best for their residents as well. Training has been an issue. It's very often something that is worked around within specific care homes or specific organizations of care homes. But it isn't something that is fully supported across the sector. And there are things there that could be improved as well. Things like accessibility in training, accessibility standards and inclusion need to be considered there as well. So there's opportunities for improvement there. One of the big things that we found is at management level of care homes that it seems to be a really kind of critical role whereby individuals don't really get the time for self-care. There is no professional progression and there is no peer community around managers. So those are things that we could be addressing really kind of practically and with huge impact for the whole team and the whole sector. Because some of the feedback we've had, some of the information that we've had has pointed to the role that managers play on the shop floor, as it were. Should they be out of their office or not? There are different viewpoints on that. So, and the teams, the frontline staff really, really appreciate when the managers are there, but there are different kind of attitudes to whether that should be happening or not. And so the managers are caught in this kind of bind.
So there could be some quite systemic changes that emerge.
There are some, and I think one of our partners put it very, very well. And in fact, we've and some of our other researchers have done work on what's called the emotional burden of care. And most of the staff that we've spoken to, they all articulate without this relationship with the residents, there is no care, there is no care service, because that's what a care service is this relationship. But if I don't have the time to give to this relationship and make it a quality relationship, then there is no care service. And it is the systemic issues that are pressing on that. And one of our partners put it, I thought, very, very well. The people that are involved in that care service take on those systemic issues and do the work anyway. They take on that emotional burden within that complex situation knowingly. And that really puts so much pressure on them. But it's been referred to as, a person-centered approach to care. They really pay attention to the individual. And that takes time, and it takes a sort of a valuing, a prizing approach to the other individual. What our partners in the project have said is that why can't that be replicated at the resourcing and commissioning level, at the standards level? So what actually is enacted on the ground is not then built into the resourcing model, into the business model. And therefore, there's a huge pressure at the front line. Yeah. What if we introduced, we're talking about things like values-based recruitment, for example. What about values-based resourcing?
Yeah.
Yeah, so real systemic issues.
A real systemic change. Well, look, Sarah and Luis, thank you very much indeed for talking to me this morning. It really does sound fascinating. I'm very much looking forward to being part of the next stage of work, and hopefully we can talk again in 6 months' time, and we can share some of the amazing change that you're starting to make happen. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.